Saudi Arabia is quietly bolstering its military infrastructure, locking into place advanced radar arrays and anti-missile batteries across the desert. This specific upgrade alters the math for Iran's military planners. If you want to understand the moves currently reshaping the Middle East, hit subscribe, because we're mapping out exactly how this rivalry actually works. Before 1979, Iran and Saudi Arabia were manageable competitors. Both sat on the same side of American strategy in the Gulf. They competed for oil markets and prestige, but they respected clear borders and understood the limits of their rivalry. That status quo collapsed in 1979. The new leadership in Tehran rebranded the state into a revolutionary movement. They openly declared their model wasn't meant to stay within Iranian borders. They intended to export their system and reshape the governments around them. From Riyadh's perspective, this outward push was a direct challenge to their survival. Saudi Arabia is built on its role as the guardian of Mecca and Medina. When Iran positioned itself as an alternative voice for Muslims worldwide, Saudi leaders saw an immediate threat to their religious and political legitimacy. What had been a standard competition over trade routes turned into a zero-sum contest. Neither side felt they could afford to lose, and the rules of engagement shifted from diplomacy to ideology. The tension quickly spilled into open conflict. When Saddam Hussein invaded Iran in 1980, Saudi Arabia actively funded Iraq to halt Tehran's revolutionary push. That 8-year war drained both sides. By 1987, the hostility reached inside Saudi borders, when clashes between Iranian pilgrims and Saudi security forces in Mecca left over 400 people dead. An uneasy quiet held through the 90s, but the U.S. invasion of Iraq in 2003 removed Saddam Hussein from power. While it toppled a dictator, it also eliminated the massive geographic and military buffer that had physically blocked Iran from expanding westward. Tehran capitalized on that vacuum. Instead of sending conventional armies, they supplied weapons, training, and cash to local militias. Step by step, they began knitting together a corridor of allied forces stretching from Iran, through Iraq and Syria, all the way to Lebanon. Securing that corridor came with a massive human toll. When Bashar al-Assad's government faced collapse in Syria, Iran funneled in thousands of advisors, billions in aid, and transnational militias to keep him in power. Saudi Arabia countered by funding rebel groups. The resulting conflict killed 500,000 people and displaced millions more. The battlefield eventually moved right to the Saudi border. In Yemen, Iran backed the Houthi rebels, providing them with the technology to launch drones and ballistic missiles hundreds of kilometers deep into Saudi territory. By 2015, Tehran's reliance on low-cost, high-impact asymmetric warfare had successfully forced Saudi Arabia to defend multiple fronts at once. Riyadh's answer was to heavily anchor its security within the American military system. The kingdom signed over $100 billion in advanced weapons deals and quietly stepped up intelligence coordination with Israel to monitor Iranian activity. But conventional weapons struggle against swarm tactics. In 2019, coordinated drone and missile strikes hit the Abqaiq oil processing facility. That single operation temporarily knocked out half of Saudi Arabia's production capacity and wiped out roughly 5% of the global oil supply in a single day. Exhausted by the constant pressure, both sides agreed to a pause. In 2023, China stepped in and brokered a deal that restored diplomatic ties. Embassies reopened, and the rhetoric cooled down. But the agreement lacked security guarantees and left the proxy militias completely intact. The pressure is building again, and the timing is awful for Riyadh. Saudi Arabia is currently spending billions on Vision 2030 to diversify its economy away from oil. When Houthi strikes disrupt shipping lanes in the Red Sea, insurance costs jump, and the foreign investment required for those massive domestic projects hesitates. The rivalry is actively targeting Saudi Arabia's economic viability. For the kingdom, stopping Tehran's regional reach is a requirement for building their own future. This chart shows the timeline of Iran's uranium enrichment. After the collapse of the 2015 nuclear deal, Tehran accelerated its program, reaching roughly 60% purity. That shrinks the breakout time, the window needed to produce enough material for a weapon, down to weeks. Outside powers have tried to force a stop. In 2025, coordinated Israeli strikes targeted Iranian centrifuge halls and subterranean sites like Fordo. But because Iran had heavily dispersed its stockpiles, the strikes only delayed the program. A nuclear-capable Iran could provide total cover for its proxy militias. Recognizing this imbalance, Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman has stated plainly that if Iran acquires a nuclear weapon, Saudi Arabia will rapidly develop its own. If you think this is isolated to the Middle East, look at the supply chains. A missile fired at an oil port or a drone targeting a cargo ship hits your wallet directly. It raises fuel prices, spikes global inflation, and increases grocery costs. Every pause in this long contest has been temporary, and every return to conflict has carried heavier consequences. As we sit in 2026, the risk of miscalculation could easily tip the region into a sustained arms race. Let me know in the comments how you think the international community should respond to these shipping disruptions. And if you want to keep tracking the geopolitics driving the global economy, hit that like button and subscribe. This stopped being a regional border dispute decades ago. It is now the central pivot point for global trade and international stability.